Single dad rescued siblings cast out by in-laws. Never knew their mom hid a billionaire life. She found them under a pine tree, barefoot, shivering, clutching each other as if the wind might carry them away. The boy couldn't have been older than 8, the girl maybe 5, both wrapped in oversized jackets that didn't belong to them. The morning frost hadn't yet melted, and the roadside was quiet. Too quiet for children this small to be standing alone. And that's how Noah Sawyer's life changed forever. On a Tuesday, he almost didn't take the back road home. Before we unravel the story of an accidental rescue that became something more, of secrets buried in grief, of a mother's hidden legacy, and the found family that blooms in the unlikeliest soil, please take a second to subscribe. If gentle, heartfelt stories matter to you, your support helps us share more moments that heal and uplift. Now, let's begin. Noah had never meant to be a single dad, but life, as he'd come to learn, doesn't negotiate. It takes, and if you're lucky, it leaves behind something worth rebuilding. His daughter Molly was 5 when her mom passed. That had been 2 years ago. 2 years of silent breakfast and watching the same movies on repeat, because Molly said they made the house feel less empty. 2 years of pretending he knew what he was doing, raising a daughter, running a hardware store, and holding himself together with coffee and checklists. That morning had started like any other. Noah had dropped off Molly at school, stocked the paint aisle, and drove out to a client's farmhouse to check on a busted boiler. On his way back, he chose the scenic route, a narrow road that curved through pine woods and opened to a wide field. He took it when he needed to breathe. That's where he saw them. 2 kids, still as statues, standing just beyond the ditch. No adults, no bags, just eyes too old for their faces. He pulled over slowly, kept the engine running. "You guys okay?" he called out, stepping onto the gravel. The boy took a step forward, shielding his sister. "We're not supposed to talk to strangers." That sentence, so practiced, so worn, nearly broke him. "I'm Noah. I live down that way," he said gently, pointing past the trees. "You're cold. I've got blankets in the truck. And hot chocolate, if that helps." The girl's eyes flickered. She hadn't spoken yet, but she was clearly listening. "Are you lost?" Noah asked, taking another step closer. The boy didn't answer at first. Then, "We were staying with our uncle and aunt after Mom died, but they told us to go wait outside, and then they locked the door." Noah's breath caught. "Do you know their number?" he asked carefully. The boy shook his head. "They turned off the phones. Said they don't want extra baggage." Noah didn't ask for more. He just opened the passenger door and held out the blanket. The girl moved first. Back at his house, Noah made grilled cheese while the kids, Liam and Ivy, they told him, sat on the floor near the fireplace. Molly, curious as ever, joined them when she came home from school, sharing her crayons and offering her favorite stuffed bear for Ivy to hold. "Why are they here?" she asked Noah when they were alone. "Just visiting for a little while," he said. "They needed a place to be safe." Molly nodded like that made sense. "Then they can be here." That night, Noah sat on the porch, phone in hand, tried to decide who to call. Social services? The sheriff? He knew what the protocol was. But something about the way Liam flinched at loud noises, the way Ivy didn't let go of Molly's hand for hours, it all felt too fragile for paperwork and strangers. So he waited. Just one night, he told himself. One night to make sure they were okay. But one night became a week. And then a month. The town didn't ask too many questions. They knew Noah, solid, decent, the guy who fixed your faucet and never overcharged. The kids just seemed to fit, like missing pieces that had finally found their place. Liam started helping at the shop after school. He had a knack for remembering tool codes and reading diagrams. Ivy and Molly became inseparable, inventing worlds in the backyard. Leaving muddy footprints Noah could never bring himself to clean up. He began to sleep better, laugh more. The silence in the house broke in soft, steady waves. Then came the letter. It arrived in a cream envelope with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of thick paper, folded neatly. "Mr. Sawyer, I believe you've been caring for my sister's children. We need to talk. There are matters of estate and custody to discuss. Eliza Sterling. The name meant nothing to him, but the chill it sent down his spine meant everything. He drove into town that afternoon and asked Clara, the librarian, if she could dig up anything on the name. She raised an eyebrow, but didn't pry. Clara had known him since high school. 2 hours later, she handed him a folder. Eliza Sterling, CEO of Sterling Holdings, a private equity firm with roots in Seattle and Zurich, known for philanthropy and a tight circle of associates. No public children, no scandal. But one article caught Noah's eye. It was a wedding announcement from a decade ago. Sterling Marchant. Eliza Sterling weds famed architect Jonathan Marchant. Guests included. His heart stopped. Right there, third name down. Samantha Marchant, sister of the groom. Samantha, that had been Liam and Ivy's mom's name. He brought the folder home and read it twice, then again. The pieces didn't fit. Or maybe they did, in a way that scared him. That night, as the kids watched cartoons and Molly braided Ivy's hair, Noah stared at the fire and tried to make sense of the impossible. Had the woman who once struggled to pay for school lunches really been related to billionaires? Why hadn't she said anything? And more importantly, what did they want now? Eliza came in person 2 days later. She was composed, tall, and dressed in navy. Not unkind, but precise. "I didn't know about the children until recently," she said, seated at Noah's kitchen table, her hands folded around a cup of untouched tea. "My brother and I were estranged from Samantha for years. She chose a different path." Noah didn't reply. He didn't trust the calm in her voice. "I didn't come to take them away," she continued. "I came to tell you they have an inheritance, a trust. Their mother never touched it. She refused." He blinked. "Why?" Eliza's eyes softened slightly. "Because it came with strings." Noah looked over at the living room, where the kids were now building a fort out of couch cushions. "What kind of strings?" he asked. Eliza sighed. "The kind that turn people into property." She reached into her bag and pulled out a leather notebook. It was old, the edges frayed. She kept journals. "We found this among her things. It explains more than I ever could." Noah didn't open it right away. He waited until everyone was asleep. By firelight, he read about a girl who grew up in wealth but never belonged, who fell in love with a man who taught third grade and made art out of driftwood, who walked away from penthouses and gala invites because she believed love was worth more, who kept her children close and her secrets closer. "I didn't want them to be raised as pawns," she'd written. "I wanted them to be raised as people." Noah closed the journal slowly. His throat felt tight. The next morning, Liam stood by the window, looking out at the frost. "Was Mom rich?" he asked quietly. Noah sat beside him. "In some ways, yeah, but she gave it up." "Why?" "To give you something better." Liam didn't speak for a long time. Then, "Do we have to go with them now?" "No," Noah said. "Not if you don't want to." He didn't realize until he said it how much he meant it. Eliza didn't push. She returned to Seattle after setting up a local account in the kid's name, appointing Noah as temporary guardian. There was paperwork still, courts to convince, but she seemed to understand something sacred had happened here, something not easily undone. But not everyone agreed, because a week later, the knock came at midnight. A man in a tailor coat stood on the porch, flanked by 2 others. "I represent the Sterling Board," he said, "and those children carry a name that matters to us. We intend to see that it's used properly." Noah didn't answer. He just stepped between the man and the door. The man smiled thinly. "We can do this the hard way, or the legal way, but they will not remain here, not when the world is watching." Noah's voice was low. "Then let the world see, and let it learn the meaning of home." The man turned without another word. Inside, Liam was already awake. He stood at the top of the stairs, eyes wide. "Are they coming to take us?" Noah looked at him, then at Ivy, who had appeared behind her brother, clutching her bear. He took a deep breath. "Not if I can help it." And as the first light of dawn began to glow through the trees, a quiet resolve settled in Noah's chest. This wasn't just about rescue anymore. It was about belonging, and he was ready to fight for it. The headlights vanished into trees, but Noah didn't move. Not until the last crunch of tires faded and the wind returned, brushing softly through the pine needles like breath finally exhaled. He didn't speak, not even as the cold seeped through his socks and his heart pounded against his ribs like a warning drum. Behind him, the cabin was quiet, but he could feel them watching. When he finally turned, Liam was still on the stairs, arms protectively spread in front of Ivy, who clutched her bear and blinked through tears she hadn't let fall. Noah stepped inside, closing the door with a soft finality. "We're safe," he said. "Tonight we're safe." But he didn't sleep. That morning, after making sure Molly got to school and the kids were still curled on the couch beneath a mountain of quilts, Noah drove into town. He didn't stop at the hardware store, didn't check the mail. Instead, he parked in front of the town hall and climbed the stone steps 2 at a time. Clara met him at the top. "I heard," she said. "Word travels." He nodded, jaw tight. "I need to make it official," he said. "Guardianship. Permanency. I don't want some suit from Seattle deciding their future." Clara placed a hand on his arm. "You're not alone," she said, "but you'll need more than good intentions. You'll need proof, paperwork, testimonies." "I've got some," he said. "Their mom's journal, Eliza Sterling's approval. But I need help putting all together." She nodded. "Come with me." They sat for hours. Clara pulled strings, called the family attorney who had handled local adoptions, reached out to a retired judge who owed her a favor. By sunset, a folder 3 inches thick sat in front of Noah. Declarations, notarized witness letters, and the beginnings of a formal custody filing. But the pressure wasn't just legal, because the next morning, the kids' faces were on a tabloid website, blurred but unmistakable. The headline read, "Heiress's orphaned children found living in backwoods cabin. Corporate custody battle brewing." Noah's phone rang nonstop. Journalists called. Bloggers speculated. The media circus began to circle like vultures. The kids saw it too. Ivy clung tighter to Molly. Liam stopped speaking altogether. And Noah felt helpless for the first time since that morning by the pines. Then came the court summons. A formal petition had been filed in King County by Sterling board representatives, claiming the children were being housed in a non-secure, non-educational environment incompatible with their inheritance obligations. They used words like legacy, family, image, stability. No one used the word love. Noah sat at the kitchen table, the paper spread before him, head in his hands. Sarah Beth, Molly's kindergarten teacher, showed up with groceries and a warm casserole. The pastor stopped by with a letter of recommendation and a signed affidavit. Even old Mrs. Kaminsky from the bakery sent in a notarized statement about Noah's parenting. People rallied, quietly but firmly, because they had seen something the board hadn't. They had seen a man become a father again, and they had seen 2 kids remember how to be children. When the court date came, Noah wore his only suit. The kids dressed in clothes donated by the church boutique. Molly held Ivy's hand the whole time. Liam carried the journal. The courthouse felt colder than expected, all marble and silence. The board's lawyer looked like he'd never once known what it meant to kneel on a wood floor and teach a child how to tie shoes. But the judge looked kind. She was older, wore her glasses low, and when she asked questions, she waited for the answers. They presented everything. The journal, the testimonials, Eliza's sworn statement granting Noah her full support, the video of Liam explaining that he wanted to stay, not because it was easy, but because it was home. Then the board's lawyer stood. He called the cabin unorthodox, questioned Noah's education, his income, his ability to handle children with assets. "Are you prepared," he asked, "to teach them about investments, about navigating high society? Their future is bigger than a small-town shop." Noah didn't flinch. "I can teach them to be kind, to be brave, to be honest. I can teach them to build something that lasts. If that's not enough, maybe the future needs to change." The courtroom went silent. Then the judge cleared her throat. "I'll issue a decision in 3 days," she said. Those 3 days were long, but they were also beautiful, because the community kept coming. dropping off meals, leaving notes on the porch. Someone even built a wooden swing and tied it to the maple tree in the yard. The morning the verdict arrived, Liam was on the porch with a mug of hot cocoa. Ivy was planting seeds with Molly in the garden. Noah stood at the mailbox, hands shaking. He didn't read the letter there. He walked inside, sat by the fire, and called them all over. "We're a family," he said, voice tight. "No matter what this paper says." Liam nodded. Ivy crawled into his lap. Molly reached for his hand. Then he opened it. The court had granted him full guardianship. Indefinitely. Ivy squealed. Liam's shoulders dropped. Molly smiled so wide her cheeks hurt. But Noah just wept. The next week, Eliza returned. She wasn't in a suit this time, just jeans and a navy sweater. "I read the decision," she said, eyes misty. "And I think Samantha would have been proud." She was already proud, Noah said, of them, of herself. Eliza knelt beside Ivy and tucked a curl behind her ear. "I'd like to stay in their lives, if that's okay." Ivy looked at Noah, then back at her. "Do you know how to bake cookies?" Eliza blinked. "I can learn." Then, "Okay." Life moved on. The story faded from the news. The trust was converted into a scholarship fund for underprivileged kids across the state. With Ivy and Liam's names on the board, Noah expanded the shop. Liam helped build shelves and draw up blueprints. Ivy started first grade and declared her favorite subject to be everything. Molly taught her to ride a bike. Noah built a fort. Eliza visited monthly and eventually brought books, not contracts. They were never perfect, but they were always real. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, Noah sat on the porch watching the three kids chase fireflies. Clara stopped by with a pie. "You ever think," she asked, "what would have happened if you hadn't taken the back road?" Noah smiled. "Every day." Clara looked at him. "You're not just raising kids, you're raising healing." He nodded, "And they're raising me right back." That night, as the wind danced through the trees and laughter echoed through the windows, Noah closed a journal he'd been writing in, not Samantha's, his, because stories this full didn't end. They kept growing, and so did he.